Hello everyone, it is mock video number 3 for the paper Judaism. Okay, so what's this paper going to look like? Well, it is smaller than the other two papers. It is only 1 hour long. There are 2 sections, and in each section there is one A, B, C and D question. So you've got 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's and 2 D questions across the paper, and there are no spag marks given within this paper. Okay, we're going to start with the topic of covenants. You're going to be shown 9 headings, and I want you to bullet point summarize what you know about the headings, and I also want you to tell me which covenant they link to. So that could be either the covenant with Moses on Sinai or the covenant with Abraham. So you're telling me what you know about the headings and which covenant it links to. Okay, so these are your 9 headings. So what I want you to do is I would like you to pause the video now, and I want you to write down as much as you can about each of these headings. Pause the video now, make notes and tell me which covenant they link to. Off you go. Okay, so here's our first 3. So the 10 Commandments, these are universal laws. They apply to all people at all times. So that means they apply to men and women and children. They are a form of moral absolutism. So these are rules which Jews believe should be followed by all people at all times. They include rules like do not kill, which Jews may interpret to mean that murder, abortion, assisted suicide, these are all wrong. Jews believe that God gave these to Moses on Mount Sinai, and they make up part of the 613 mitzvot. Now, some Jews believe that Moses only received the 10 Commandments, whilst Orthodox Jews believe that Moses was given all 613 commandments on Sinai. So, of course, the link here is to the covenant on Sinai, the covenant with Moses. Promised land. So this applies to both covenants. Now, in the Abrahamic covenant, God promises the Jewish race a place to live. So he promises Abraham a Jewish race, and he says he's going to give them a promised land to live in. Now, in the covenant on Sinai, God leads the Jews to the promised land, and Moses famously died just as they arrived and looked out to the promised land. Jewish people are able to move to Israel today, which is considered the promised land. So the Jewish government there, the Israeli government, offers visas to Jews, and they are able to settle freely. Now, the promised land has seen much fighting over the years between the Israelis and Palestinians, and unfortunately that continues to this day. As many descendants as stars in the sky. This is one of my favorite quotes from the course. And God promised Abraham a Jewish race, so he said he would give him as many descendants as stars in the sky. This means that all Jewish people will be and would be one and equal. So this not only shows that the Jewish race were given to or given by God, but this is also a miracle, as God granted Abraham and Sarah children, even though they were very old. Sarah was actually 99 at the time when she first conceived, and this is when they first entered into the covenant. So that, of course, links to the covenant with Abraham. So you might want to pause that now, and you might want a green pen correct. Now, be sure when you are correcting your answers to do it in green or in a different color, and I'm going to explain why right at the end of the video. So if you are adding any new information, do it in a different color, please. Okay, so you might want to pause it now and add any information. Covenant of circumcision. God said, circumcise all the boys to Abraham, which is why all Jewish boys enter the covenant themselves at 8 days old. This gives Jews identity, makes them equal, and is a physical reminder of the covenant. And that covenant is the covenant with Abraham. 40 years in the wilderness. After Moses freed the Jews, he wandered the desert for 40 years trying to find the promised land. They lived in tents and struggled to stay alive. So today in the festival of Sukkot, Jewish males sleep outside in huts to remember their ancestors. They eat food and pray, and this links to the covenant with Moses. Monotheism. This is the belief in one God. Abraham rejected belief in idols, which incidentally is what his dad sold. He sold little idols which people could pray to, that is. He entered into a covenant with Abraham in which he promised a Jewish race and promised land in exchange for belief in one God. In the covenant with Moses, one of the 10 commandments states, "Have no gods before me." So that means monotheism is a key, central belief for all Jews. It is a part of both covenants. Passover. The angel of death passed over the houses of all non-Jews in Egypt, killing the firstborn. This is remembered in the festival of Pesach. Now, during this, Jews eat a meal to remember the struggles of those slaves who fled Egypt. They go to the synagogue to worship and say prayers together at home as a family. And this, of course, links to the covenant with Moses. Bar mitzvah. This takes place when a boy is 13, when they become son of the commandments. They are expected to live by the mitzvah. Now, this means they are seen as adults in the eyes of those around them, and they have a duty to live out the Torah laws. Now, this links to the covenant with Moses. The Torah. Now, the Torah are the books of Moses. They are part of the Tanakh. They contain the creation stories. They contain the covenants with Moses and Abraham. They contain the commandments which Jews are expected to live by. And this links to the covenant with Moses. You now might want to pause the video and green pen or correct in a different coloured pen. I now want you to complete a mind map on sources of wisdom in Judaism. This is looking at 2 key sources, which is the Tanakh, which contains the Torah, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, and also the Talmud. I would like you to pause the video now and to bullet point summarize everything you know about each of the headings which are presented. So pause the video now and summarize what you know, and then I'll talk you through each point. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Tanakh. It is considered the books of Moses, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So the Torah was given to Moses by God and contains the mitzvot, 10 commandments, which are part of the 613 commandments. Contains the creation narratives, which state that God made the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Some Jews take this as the literal truth, others do not. They see it as metaphorical about God's nature, i.e. as omnipotent and omnibenevolent. Now, Jews have the Sabbath day to remember the 7th day of creation and to give thanks to God. You might want to pause the video and add anything that you may have missed in green or a different coloured pen. So the Nevi'im consists of 8 books that trace Jewish history and say more about Jewish laws. So that follows on from the Torah. Each of the books are named after one of 8 prophets who are believed to have been chosen by God to encourage Jews to follow God's laws. There are 2 sections of this. There are the former and latter prophets. The books of the former prophets talk about the history of the Israelites and the history of the Jewish people. Now, the books of the latter prophets contain the words of 15 prophets, including Isaiah. Now, In Isaiah 53, it prophesies that there will be a suffering servant, one who will suffer for the fate of mankind, and it explains that this is what the Messiah will be like in nature. Now you might want to pause the video again and add any information down in a separate colour to the one that you originally used. So pause the video now and make notes. The Ketuvim contains 11 books, including Psalms and Proverbs. Many of these books contain writings on philosophy and Jewish thought. In the story of Job, it teaches that we cannot understand God's plans for us, or we cannot fully understand God's plans for us. So we must accept evil and suffering as part of the world and trust in God that things will turn out right. Now, Psalms are often read in the synagogue during worship and in festivals. Now, again, please stop the video and in a different coloured pen, add anything that you may not have or anything that you may have missed. The Talmud contains rabbinic teachings, so teachings from rabbis, which interpret and expand Torah law to make it relevant to the daily lives of Jews in the first 5 centuries. Rabbinic tradition, as laid down in the Talmud, is also referred to as the oral Torah. For many Jews, the Talmud is as holy and binding as the Torah itself. According to traditional belief, the oral Torah was given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai at the same time as he received the written Torah. It was passed down by word of mouth for generations until it was written down by rabbis in the Talmud. The Talmud describes many instances when the laws of Shabbat can be broken in order to save a life. For example, on a Saturday, Jews are expected to rest and not carry out any work at all. However, Pikuach Nefesh means that it is acceptable for someone to carry out work on a Saturday to save a life. For example, by moving rubble from a collapsed wall to save a child, or extinguishing a fire if someone were trapped. Rabbis continue to discuss the Talmud and other rabbinic works to provide guidance on issues that arise within the Jewish communities today. For example, as a result of discoveries in genetic engineering and gene therapy, they may discuss questions that are raised about the use of these techniques and the concept of sanctity of life. So again, I would like you to pause the video, have a look at your own notes and what you've summarized, and in a different colored pen, I want you to add anything that you may have missed. So pause the video and do that now, please. You now have 12 questions, which I want you to answer in as much depth as you possibly can. So just bullet point the answers down, please. Pause the video now and write down what you know about these questions. Off you go. So the Shekinah is the divine presence of God on earth. An example of that is when the burning bush spoke to Moses. So Jews teach that God is a judge and that he will judge them on whether they live a good life, whether they keep the commandments, whether they follow the rituals that are mentioned in the Tanakh, such as the covenant of circumcision. In the Tanakh, it says, God will bring every deed into judgment, whether it is good or evil. Now, some Jews believe that they will be judged by God as soon as they die, while others believe that they will be judged on the day of judgment. And this is when the Messiah brings in the Messianic age. Jews believe they may be sent to a place called Olam Haba, which is the world to come. It's like heaven, if we think of it from a Christian or in a Christian context, or Sheol, which is like hell, which is referred to as a place of darkness in the Tanakh. The Jew may see this life as having more importance, or they may focus more on this life than the world to come, because, well, quite simply, we don't know exactly what will happen when we die. Okay, so they believe that as long as they are living by the commandments, as long as they are going to the synagogue on Shabbat, as long as they are undertaking Jewish rituals like Brit Milah, then they are living a good life, and what will happen in the next world, in the next life, is for God to decide. So, what did Abraham promise God? So, Abraham promised God that the Jews would circumcise all the boys and that they would believe in one God. This is called monotheism. So, you might want to pause the video now and you might want to correct your answers in a different coloured pen. Make sure it is a different coloured pen you're doing corrections in. What did God promise Abraham? Well, God promised a Jewish race that would be rewarded with a promised land. He promised Abraham specifically as many descendants as stars in the sky. So what will the Jewish Messiah do? He will rebuild the temple so that all Jews can worship together, and so some of the commandments can be fulfilled, because some of the commandments are specifically about the temple. He will unite all Jews and therefore fulfill the Abrahamic covenant of the fact there'd be a Jewish race and they'd all be in the promised land. He would fulfill the Jewish prophecies found in the Nevi'im and bring peace to the world so that there are no wars and no hurt. And what would he be like? So the Jewish Messiah will be male, a descendant of King David. He wouldn't be divine, and could be seen to be a warrior. Now, these teachings are found in the book of Jeremiah. Now, in the book of Isaiah, it teaches that the Messiah will be a political leader and a judge. He will create a fair government in Israel, which will become the center for all politics worldwide. And both these books are interestingly found in the Nevi'im. The prophets were believed to have been guided by God. However, the Torah, which Jews believe was given directly to Moses by God, never directly mentions the Messiah. What is Shabbat? Shabbat is the Jewish holy day which takes place on a Friday at sunset to a Saturday sunset. It remembers when God rested on the seventh day. Jews cannot do things like homework, use phones, or do any work. They go to the synagogue and pray with other Jews during Shabbat, and the Ten Commandments say, remember the Sabbath day. Again, you might want to pause the video and you might want to add any information you are missing in a different coloured pen. So pause it now and add in a different coloured pen. So let's list 3 kosher foods. Well, chicken is kosher, so Jews are allowed to eat chicken. Cod, as Jews are only allowed to eat from the sea things with fins and scales, so they're not allowed to eat shellfish. And they're allowed to eat beef because cows chew their food and have split hooves. Now, these rules are contained within the mitzvah, mainly in the books of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and they're found in the Torah, which was given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. So the quote means that dairy and meat cannot be eaten together, so no cheeseburgers. Now, some Jews would wait until their food has been fully digested and is no longer in their system before they eat either dairy or meat, depending on which one they've already eaten previously. Now, it would also mean in some Jewish households that they have a sink, which is just specifically for dairy products, and a sink which is just for meat products. Now, this means a few things. Well, it means that it may be a bit difficult, mightn't it, being Jewish and keeping the food laws, because you're going to be constantly looking at what you've eaten and what you're about to eat. It also might be quite expensive to have 2 sinks within your kitchen as well. You'd need a lot of space. So Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, and it commemorates the creation of the world. It lasts for 2 days. Now, Rosh Hashanah is also seen as a day of judgment, when Jews believe that God balances a person's good deeds over the last year against their bad deeds and decides what the next year will be like for them. Now, all Jews take part in this festival, and it is one of the most important festivals. It is a high holiday. Yom Kippur is the most important Jewish festival. It is the Day of Atonement. Now, it is very important because it is where Jews ask for forgiveness, and it is where they offer forgiveness to other people. Now, the day remembers when Moses went up to the top of Mount Sinai and then brought the 10 Commandments down to the Israelites. Now, when he got back down to the Israelites, they were worshipping a false idol. And Moses got so angry that he smashed the 10 Commandments up. And then he went back up to the top of Mount Sinai and he asked for forgiveness for all of the Jews. And he was granted atonement, and all of the Israelites were granted forgiveness by God. So this is what they remember on Yom Kippur. They spend a lot of time fasting. They spend a lot of time in the synagogue as well. Now, Jews believe that on this day, the Messianic age will be brought in. So on one Yom Kippur, it will be the start of the Messianic age. So it is absolutely the most important day of the Jewish calendar, and it's worshipped and practiced, and all Jews take part in it. Now, again, what I want you to do is I would like you to pause the video. There's loads of information there, and I want you to please green pen or add information in a different color. Okay, and I'll explain why I want you to do that in a bit. So pause it now and add any information in. Off you go. Okay, so this is your final task. Hasn't the time flew? Because you're having such fun. So this is the type statement that you're going to get in your D questions. Okay, so your extended writing questions. So this is the Shekinah is the most important Jewish belief. Now, I can't stress enough that when you get a question like this, it isn't just looking for information about the Shekinah. Okay. Now, obviously, you need to answer about the Shekinah, and it's great if you can evaluate kind of the value of belief in the Shekinah. Okay, so that's important, but it's also given you the opportunity to say that other beliefs are more important. Okay, so you might have that actually belief in the Messiah is the most important Jewish belief. Okay, or you might have belief in one God is the most important Jewish belief. Okay, so you need to really think about the fact that when you get this type of question, that it's quite broad, so it gives you the opportunity to utilize that kind of depth of knowledge that you have about Judaism. So what I want you to do is pause the video and maybe make a little table and think about how you would answer this type of question. Okay, so pause the video now and do that, please. Okay, so I've written a portion of a paragraph here for you. So some Jews disagree and state that the Messiah is the most important Jewish belief. They believe this because the Messiah will bring about the messianic age in which all people will live in peace. Okay, now, like you have with the last two videos, I want you to evaluate this. So you can do this in two ways. You can think about the source, or you can think about impact, or you can do both, which we are actually going to do. But have a go. Say this is a strong argument because, and explain why it is, or say this is a weak argument and why, and explain that. Okay, so not just a sentence. Okay, you need to say it's weak because of this reason, therefore this. Okay, so it needs to be a little bit of development in your evaluation. So pause the video now, look at what I've started writing, and evaluate. Off you go. Okay, so I have looked at the source here and I've said, well, this is a strong statement because it comes from the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible. As a result, this view comes from God, so it must be respected. So what I want you to do now is I want you to respond to my evaluation. You can either respond by saying, well, this can be weakened because of these reasons, or you can further agree that this is a strong belief that the Messiah is the most important Jewish belief. Now, I want you to think here about the impact. So what is the impact of the belief in the Messiah on the Jewish people themselves? So think about what impact it may have believing in the Messiah on their lives. Okay, so pause the video and I want you to try and do that now. Off you go. So here you can see that I have now evaluated it from the point of view of impact on Jewish lives. So this teaching may have a huge impact on Jewish lives. If they believe that the Messiah will bring peace, they may see it as a good example for how they should live their lives. As a result, they may live peaceful lives too and live as pacifists. A pacifist is someone who is anti-war. Okay. So that's all the ingredients that you need for a paragraph. Okay, so in this case, we have disagreed with the statement the Shekinah is the most important Jewish belief, and we've just looked at the Messiah and said that's the most important belief. And then we've evaluated it, saying that actually belief in the Messiah being central in Judaism is strong for you because of the source and also because of the impact it would have on Jewish living. Okay, so what we're going to do now. So you've finished the video, well done, and thank you. I really do appreciate you sticking through this until the end. I really hope it has helped you. Now, I've said throughout the video that I wanted you to add any new information in green. And this is for the same reason as I did with video 1 and video 2. And that's because I want you to now go back and look at where you are maybe lacking depth in knowledge. And I want you to use the green pen or the different colored pen as a guide as to what you need to be revising before your mock. So this might be material that you're a bit unsure of. So use your revision cards or create new revision cards using the content from this video. Make mind maps. You should self-test. You could ask parents or carers or brothers or sisters to test you as well. You could write some questions out about the information and get someone to ask them to you and then verbalize the answers to them. But make sure it's generative, okay? So make sure you are thinking about it, generating it from your brain, then checking you've got the answer right. If you haven't, then reading over and again repeating processes which are going to get you thinking hard about the answers. Okay, once you've done all that, you might want to do some model answers. You might want to email me and I'm happy to send you over some questions, some practice questions, and I'm sure they'd be very useful for you. But anyway, good luck and thank you for all of your hard work here today.